As a favor to both you guys and myself, I put every single other show that I was watching on hold so that I could go to Netflix and binge all 13 episodes of Bastard within the span of 24 hours. I did that for you guys. It's not something that I normally do. I normally don't binge watch, just go completely through a season of a show at a time, but I decided that it was necessary to do for this one because some of you guys have been subscribed here since I reviewed the Bastard manga and all of the crazy, wild, batshit insane things I had to say about that. So of course, as the anime was coming out, I had to check this out, and I had to see if it would actually hold up to the standard of what Bastard was within this crazy, outraged PC climate that we live in. Could Bastard still maintain its integrity? Could it still be what the manga was in this day and age, something that came out in the 80s that could seem pretty dated at this point, pretty, maybe taboo? Would they be actually truly willing to do it? And I can safely say that the Bastard anime went above and beyond as far as adaptations go. Now look, Bastard is not anywhere close to one of my favorite manga of all time. In fact, it's pretty poorly written in most cases, in most aspects of it. But the one thing that I appreciate about it is that it is so unapologetically itself. You can tell that the creator, the mangaka behind it, he had a vision, he had something he wanted to do, he had the tone of story that he wanted to make, he had the type of characters he wanted to do, he had the archetypes that he wanted to set up, and he did not compromise any step of the way with the shit that he wanted to do, which makes the entire story, if you go to however far in the manga you can possibly find online, because honestly it gets pretty damn complicated, it goes as far as he wanted it to do in whatever kind of crevices of his weird fucked up imagination that he wanted, and I appreciate that. I appreciate people, even if it's something that doesn't necessarily resonate with me on a deep, profound level in any sense of the word, if I can tell that somebody was creating something that is just purely an expression of themselves and the things that they enjoy, I can appreciate it just even from an outside perspective, maybe being like, you know what, that's not for me, but goddamn did he go hard while he was making it. He was also probably pretty hard while he was making it because it's one of the most perverted mangas I've ever read, and it's not actually like a hentai or anything like that. I've never read a hentai in my life. I swear to God, I never have. But Bastard comes pretty close on occasion. So, if you guys have checked out the Netflix adaptation, here's the things that I can say about it that are absolutely fantastic. Number one, like I said, it holds true to the integrity of the story. Yes, there are some things cut out. Yes, it isn't quite as explicit as the manga, but I don't expect it to be. I don't expect any anime that's made out of a seinen manga, though I do believe Bastard started as shonen. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Someone fact check me on that. But I don't expect the level of material that you're able to get away with in a manga to fully be transformed into anime format. So, you got to give it little passes here and there, or else you're just not an anime fan in general. Like, you can't expect an anime to be 100% what the manga is, because they're completely different mediums. So, I can say, though, it is not 100% what the manga is, I can say it is at least a very accurate representation of what the manga is. And the animation itself looks pretty damn fantastic. You know how I'm pretty much more of a fan of that 90s style animation, and there was a 90s Bastard anime that covered a decent portion of the manga, which actually, truth be told, I've never actually watched. I actually first experienced Bastard through the manga, which I read, I think, last year or the year before, however long it's been since I reviewed it on the channel. So I've actually never checked out the 90s version, but regardless of me preferring the aesthetics of a 90s style anime, I gotta say I was actually pretty impressed with the amount of budget that they were able to throw into this anime, even from the very first episode. Now, there's something really strange. I won't spoil much about what Bastard is in this review, but I will say the very first episode, in the first 5 minutes, actually spoils a major plot twist that happens in the manga. Now, my memory might be a little bit fuzzy because it has been a long time since I've read the manga, and you're reading it online because there's not really like good English translations or volumes to get or to pursue or anything. It's one of those manga that's kind of like lost in the West, doesn't really exist. There was a few volumes that was released at one point, but then they stopped, and then it's just like, it's a very confusing continuity to begin with. But from what I remember, and I guess I will say this because this happens in the first 5 minutes of the anime, so you're gonna you're going to see this right away anyway, so I guess it doesn't really count as a spoiler as far as the anime goes. But there's this big twist later on in the manga where it's sort of revealed that this dark fantasy sort of medieval setting world is actually like a couple hundred to thousands of years after our modern world is destroyed and annihilated. So actually the world of Bastard takes place on what we would recognize as our planet just years after sort of like a devastation and apocalypse. So instead of living in like a post-apocalyptic war-torn world like a Fist of the North Star, this is actually years and years later where humanity has managed to rebuild to the point where we're kind of at like medieval level as far as our architecture and technology goes. People are fighting with swords and spears and armor and building castles and stuff. So we're kind of like re-experiencing that medieval era of time. In the very first 5 minutes of the Bastard anime, we see our modern world and we see it being destroyed by this giant figure called like Anthrax. That's another great thing about this anime and manga is that it's very much heavy metal in its appearance, and also every single magical attack, every single spell is named after some sort of like 80s metal band. So there's spells called Megadeth, there's spells called Guns N' Roses, they live in Metallicana. So there's like all these classic like 80s metal bands that are kind of like representative throughout the entire thing. And that's sort of like the tone that you want to come to expect. So shows that in the first 5 minutes, and then it goes and cuts to the actual world that Bastard takes place in, which is in this medieval world, and it's a warring state. People are fighting against each other. There's, swords and spears and axes and, all of these sort of like classic medieval things and spells that are happening and wizards and hydras and like all of these kind of crazy creatures. So it's just it's totally basked within this amazing like Dungeons and Dragons like style of setting. But then what it does, and like what I was talking about it with it being so adult and perverted, is like it is completely what you would expect, like a stereotypical hyper masculine fantasy. And I think that at times this is actually just fine to experience. I'm glad that it didn't try to go into like a more filtered sort of PC rote. I'm glad that it really kind of maintained that style, because you know what, every once in a while it's kind of cool to just watch really jacked dudes doing really cool things while there's a bunch of scantily clad women around. I don't know what that makes me. Maybe if that makes me a horrible human being, it is what it is. I also enjoy deeper storytelling, but sometimes, every once in a while, I just like to experience that like high male fantasy with just a bunch of sexy chicks and a bunch of dudes killing each other. Can't we just have that every once in a while? Can't we just have some nice things sometimes? Sometimes that's fun. And that's what Bastard does, and that's what Bastard is. SCHNEIDER, our main character here, he is this ultimate, like, super powerful sorcerer. And he's so powerful that they had to trap him away. And he's trapped now within the body of a young boy named Lucian, who's just like a regular kid, regular boy, and this girl named Yoko takes care of him. Things get a little bit too hectic. A warring state is coming in. The only way they can survive this war is by reawakening SCHNEIDER. In order to do that, Lucian has to be kissed by a virgin, so, you have to keep Yoko nice and pure. And so, obviously, SCHNEIDER is reawakened, and SCHNEIDER has the personality like he is just the shit. He is the man. He thinks he's gorgeous. He thinks he's powerful. He thinks that every woman wants him. And, like, just having that sort of archetype and personality within this character makes it hilarious, because he wants to rule the world, not to just rule the world, because obviously who wouldn't want to just rule the world, but because that way it's the easiest way for him to create the biggest harem ever known, because he wants to get with all of these chicks. Seriously, all of SCHNEIDER's motivations is pretty much led by his dick, which leads to like an insane amount of hilarity, an insane amount of perversion, and like you think getting into this that, oh, this is going to be like an intense seinen dark fantasy, maybe this is going to be like Berserk. No, it's actually a lot closer to like, I don't know, not like Kill la Kill, but something, because it's not like that exaggerated, but it is like extremely exaggerated when it comes to perversion. Like I said, the scene that got me when I read the manga, and the scene I couldn't believe that they actually did in the anime, SCHNEIDER gets poisoned. He's got this wound that is right above his pelvis, and the only way to get rid of the poison is to suck it out. And so there's a scantily clad princess there who he tells to suck it. She starts sucking. He says, "Suck harder." Like, how can you watch that scene? Like, okay, that's the thing. That is the make or break scene of Bastard, Because if you watch that scene and you find it hilarious and you just awaken that inner 12-year-old within you and like the perverted humor that you miss from your youth that used to be acceptable, once you re-embrace that young primal like ridiculous perverted humor, you just start to embrace who Dark Schneider is as a character, and he's like a Master Roshi that's actually good with girls. Like he's a Master Roshi type archetype, like the perverted character, like a Moroku from Inuyasha, or whatever like archetype that you could think of as the perverted character, but he's actually like a badass. He actually is able to back it up, although he still gets like slapped and punched and beaten up by chicks like the entire story as well. And it's just like you just gotta embrace it. So if you get to that scene and you just think it's like too stupid or too ridiculous, or like it's like I don't know how you want to look at it. If you just think it's like too lowbrow, or too anything like that, then that's probably your moment to check out. But if you find that funny, if you can find that within your soul somewhere to find some humor in that, then Bastard is absolutely the kind of anime that's going to keep you laughing your ass off the entire way through. You just have to understand that it's exaggerated to a ridiculous degree on purpose, and it's that kind of like specific perverted anime humor that we used to get back in like the 80s and 90s, because that's when Bastard was created. That's sort of been lost to time now. It's sort of been, kind of like pushed back or pushed on the back burner. And so to actually have a character that just embraces that aspect of himself, just embraces the fact that he's like naked half the time. And that's the great thing about it too, because he could just manifest clothing whenever he wants. That's a spell he has. He can just like make himself have clothing on. But he just chooses to be naked. He just enjoys being naked and walking around naked and fighting battles while naked. So there's plenty of naked Dark Schneider to go along with this as well. So yeah, it's basically really dependent on how you find that sort of humor. But on the same scale, there is actually like big dark fantasy fights. If you like fighting in anime that has to do with like enchanted weapons and spells and fire swords and lightning swords and kind of like crazy explosions and vampires. There's vampires in this too. There's vampires, hydras, giants. What else is in here? I don't know. Half elves. There's so many different elements like that are in here, and it just throws it to you. It just bombards you with it. There's a little talking dragon, like comic relief, and it just throws it at you over and over and over again. And you're so like basked within this world that like you either accept it or you don't accept it. There's going to be people that check out of Bastard by episode 2, 3, 4 that are like, nope, I can't do this, I can't handle it. And I've been like that with other anime. There's some anime where their type of humor and their wackiness gets to me and I just can't. It's like, it's not jiving with me. I'm not feeling it. I'm not connecting to it. Like I can tell it's trying to really be funny, but it's not getting to me, and I check out of it. And I think that Bastard is the same type of way. But it's also not non-stop humor too. You actually do get the fight scenes, you do get the action sequences, you get the dark fantasy aesthetic. So all of that is in there, and it's all wrapped up into this weird, unique package that literally there's nothing else like. And so I think there's going to be more episodes in this, but so far there's 13 episodes, and it ends at an interesting point. Now, from what I remember of the manga, I can't remember how much is left after the point that it ends up until where it really shifts. It kind of shifts genres at one point. So that's something that you might want to be aware of going into this, because if the dark fantasy aspect is something that you really, really enjoy, I don't know how to say this to where it's going to make sense, because it doesn't make sense, but somehow Bastard goes from that to being like this weird Neon Genesis Evangelion style ending. I'm not going to explain that because I don't want to spoil anything, but it doesn't stick with the status quo through the entire series. So that is also going to be dependent on how well you enjoy the characters, because this might not stay the same forever, and I forget how much time we have before that shift happens. But I can safely say that I had a hell of a time binging this. I had a hell of a time watching this. I really, really enjoyed it. It is definitely not going to be for everybody, but if you can Get into the tone of the series. I think you're going to have a great time. I think you're going to laugh your ass off. I think you're going to enjoy it. And don't think too deeply about it. Don't try to get some... It does like incorporate weird like philosophical good versus evil shit later on. But in the beginning portions that the anime covers, it really just is about the fun of this world. And if you can find the fun in it, I think you'll really like it. So that is my review for the first season of Bastard, or at least the first part of the season. I'm not sure how far it's going to go. I was incredibly impressed by the animation. I was incredibly impressed by the action sequences and just how accurate it was. So yeah, I got nothing but good things to say about it. So if you have checked it out, if you're thinking about checking it out, let me know what you think down below in the comments. Other than that, guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up because it will really help me in the algorithm. It helps a lot more than you know, so thank you for that. And if you want to support the channel on that deeper level, I have a Patreon, merch store links down below. Even as low as $1 a month is like super appreciative, so whatever you guys want to do. If not, that's totally cool too. Other than that, guys, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll talk to you next time.